around the same time that I joined Google about 4.5 years ago, that song had just hit 1 billion views on YouTube, and they played it in literally every single big company and team meeting, and most of the time it would end with most of the company dancing. So I thought that was a little fun thing to walk onto. As mentioned, I'm Krista Seiden. I'm the analytics advocate for Google. I also have another job. I am the product manager for Firebase Analytics, which is our mobile app analytics solution. I've done a lot of analytics and optimization in my career over the past decade. Many companies, Google, the Apollo Group, Adobe. I'm very involved in the Digital Analytics Association. I co-chair the SF chapter, and I helped found the Women in Analytics group within the Digital Analytics Association. And if you are interested, I actually have a bunch of these stickers right here with me for Women in Analytics. So come find me after. I would be happy to give you one. But let's go ahead and dive right in. So I'm going to talk about a few things today. I'm going to talk about factors for low conversion rate, driving conversion with personalization, and then 3 tips for personalizing with Google Optimize. So first, factors for low conversion rate. There are many, as you guys probably know. So user experience, we've heard a lot about that today. Having a crappy user experience is going to drive down your conversion rates. Site content and personalization, if you're not speaking to the users who are coming to your site, then you're probably not going to do very well when it comes to conversion. Actionable web analytics, as mentioned, I'm the analytics advocate for Google. I care deeply that you are well instrumented, with your analytics so that you can understand exactly what users are doing on your website and optimize using that data. And finally, development resources. This can be a pain for many people. Back in the days of content experiments at Google, it was a huge pain for me. It's one of the reasons that we invested so heavily in a new optimization platform. But in this talk, I'm actually going to focus on site content and personalization. There was a study by Gartner last year that said 89% of companies are going to compete solely on the basis of customer experience this year, or 2016. And I think that really speaks to the fact that if you're not doing personalization, if you're not trying to understand who your customers are, you're not going to succeed out there. So let's now move into talking about driving conversion with personalization. Okay. When I got here last night, we had a nice little speakers dinner, and people were asking, oh, what are you talking about tomorrow? And I said personalization. As many of you probably would have imagined when you say personalization, people are like, huh, okay, overloaded term. This is my attempt at showing some overloaded pictures. I actually spent a lot of last year living in Asia. I didn't get any of the really cool pictures when there's like hundreds of people jammed onto a little jeepney, but I got a few cool ones. So personalization, I think, is a really overloaded term. It can mean a lot of things. A lot of people will interpret it to mean it's creepy. You are getting tracked around the internet with the same ad. People are hyper-targeting you when you don't feel comfortable with that. We know that there's a lot of movement in Europe right now to really make that not as accessible for people. I think also personalization oftentimes means that people are missing the bigger picture, that you can often personalize at a mass scale. So I'm going to go ahead and talk to you about providing personalized experiences, and I'm going to do it in 5 ways. And I'm going to start really large at mass scale, and then go all the way down to very specific and toolset specific. So the first example I want to give is understanding the market with personalization at mass scale. So when I joined Google, this is about 4.5 years ago at this point, I was working for the Google Apps for Business, or the Enterprise group. Today it's known as the G Suite group. It's how you get Google, Gmail, Docs, Drive, all of that stuff for your own business. This was one of the websites that I managed. And we had this headline, as you can see, it says, "Discover a better way of working." And our marketing team loved this. They thought it was a nice, holistic message that encompassed the idea of the suite that they were selling, because they weren't just selling Gmail, they were selling Docs and Drive and Hangouts and all of these things to help you discover a better way of working. Well, our engineering team said, hey, that's a load of crap. We know that 80% of people who sign up for Google Apps for Business only ever use Gmail. So let's test our headlines. So we did. We ran a headline test. So we tested Discover a Better Way of Working against several others that were focused around email, which is what our engineering team wanted. Little backstory, I actually built an internal server-side testing tool with the same engineering team at Google so that we could run these tests. So when they were like, hey, run this test, it wasn't really an option. We were kind of strong-armed into doing kind of what they wanted in that respect. So we ran it. 2 weeks later, when this test ended and validated, I was actually halfway around the world. I was speaking at a conference somewhere, and I was getting ready to go to bed. But that was morning time in Mountain View, and I started getting frantic pings from my VP of marketing saying, don't you dare launch that variant. And I was like, guess I need to check up on this. And then I started getting frantic pings from our VP of engineering saying, you better launch that variant, because remember that testing tool I built for you? If you don't launch it, I'm going to stop building for you. It's like, oh. So after a lot of back and forth in the middle of the night, we ended up going ahead and approving the launch of the winning variant, which was get email for your domain. You can imagine how happy that made marketing. But we also immediately launched a few follow-up tests where we tried to get back to a little bit more friendly of a marketing message. And after a few weeks, we ended with get Gmail for your business, and then some subtexts about Docs and Drive and Hangouts and all the other things that you could get. So it made everybody a little bit more happy, but what it really did was it spoke to that 80% of people who are coming to our website to sign up for Google Apps for Business just to get Gmail. So I think that's a really good example to highlight that you actually don't need to do anything at all to personalize at a mass scale if you understand who is coming to your website in the first place. The next example I want to talk about is understanding the market with personalization at a local level. So same website. This was the US version. This was the Japanese version. Looks pretty similar, right? I don't know if this is typical in your companies, but at Google and our marketing sites, there's generally one template, and it's localized for all of the different languages and countries that we serve. And we got a lot of feedback from our Japanese team that this just didn't work for Japan. This type of website didn't work. If you've ever seen a Japanese website, it's very busy. There's tons of boxes and widgets and confetti flying around. They love this stuff. It's got to have a lot on there, or it's not going to attract the right customers. And so after a lot of feedback from the team, we took some of it and we tried to reevaluate what we could do to make this website a little bit more Japanese in nature. Particularly, there was this button, go back to the English version, on the top right that said Contact Sales. And the feedback from our Japanese sales team was that nobody in Japan would ever submit a form to contact sales. It's just not the way that they do business. They like a very in-person, hand-holding type process when it comes to an enterprise sales process. So they said, hey, let's actually trade out that button for something else. Let's give these users something called a guided flow. Here's a few screenshots of what that actually looked like. When you clicked on that contact sales button, it popped up this box, and it was basically a tutorial of everything that people would need to do in the 30 days of that free trial to be able to go ahead and convert to a paying version of Google Apps for Business. And this is very similar to papers that our sales team would actually print out and take into companies to present to them. So it gave them a way to give that information to customers through the website that they weren't getting otherwise. This actually performed so well, it increased clicks on that button by about 700% and all the way down through sign up by about 8%. So it was a massive success for our Japanese teams. And because we didn't learn anything from this test, we actually tried to run the same test in other locales in the US and the UK, and it failed miserably because they don't buy things in the same way that Japan does. So I think this is a really cool way to highlight that you can personalize just by understanding the particular markets that you're interested in. We took this a few steps further with this project, and we actually wireframed out what a new Japanese-style website might look like for this business. So that was the wireframes. We even went as far as putting like a Tokyo skyline on our canvas. And about a year later, they went ahead and launched the one on the right, which is the new Japanese website, which was the first time, at least in the Google Apps enterprise business, that they broke the template for the rest of the world and had a very specific website for this locale because we had tested and proven that it worked so much better when we spoke directly to this audience. Okay, The next type of personalization is the referral source, or understanding your users at the traffic level. So this was a newer version of that Google Apps for Work website. And we actually ran a bunch of tests to try to bring our ad headlines to our website and keep consistent messaging. So here you can see this is the Gmail landing page. Users would come from an ad about getting Gmail for their business and land on this page. So we tested this against one where we just changed the headline that said, "Get Gmail for work." This was the same headline that was in the ad. And what we saw was actually a nice little bump in conversions. People who had that consistent headline going from ad to landing page did better. Seems pretty simple and pretty intuitive, but nobody really believed it until we tested it and showed them. Next is understanding the customer at the action level. So last year, I had the opportunity to speak at the Wharton Customer Analytics Initiative Conference in Philadelphia. Awesome conference. This is their conference website. So the day before the conference, I went here. I wanted to see what the schedule, the lineup was, and when I was on. And what I saw was this. The event is sold out. But I had already been to this website. I had actually filled out a form, a speaker registration, so that they had my information, they knew I was coming. So instead of showing me something so generic that the event is sold out, since they know that I've submitted that form, they could change the message and say, "Hey, we're looking forward to seeing you there." They could personalize it further with my name or something like that. Might get a little creepy. But you can do something as simple as this just based on the fact that you know that that form has already been submitted. OK, personalizing in real time. So we started really broad at the mass level. And we've gone down, getting a little bit more specific each time. This is one of the most specific cases that I'm going to talk about, and it's in real time. It is, in this case, tool specific, but you can do this probably with any optimization tool. So this is the Serene Sierras. It's a fictional outdoor gears website. And let's say that a user comes to this website, and they are really interested in that Adirondack chair, that chair in the middle there. We know that because they've clicked on that chair, they've gone to the chair page a few times, but they haven't actually added to cart yet. And again, we know that because we have Google Analytics on here. We can look at all that analytics data. We can understand that people are coming to this page multiple times. They have intent. They have interest. We haven't yet convinced them to buy. I'm a fan of subtle messaging. So when a user comes back to this homepage, why don't we change the messaging a little bit? Right now, it says, "Life's busy" on that subheadline, right? So I'm going to load this page up into Google Optimize, and I'm just going to change that headline a little bit. I'm going to add a sentence, and I'm going to say, "Life's busy, take a seat." And then I'm going to go ahead and set up my targeting, or my experiment objectives. In this case, I care that people have, shout it out. Bought a chair, thank you. They've clicked that big green button to add to cart. So that's going to be my first objective, that they added to cart. These are just your goals from Google Analytics if you're not familiar with Optimize. I can add a bunch of objectives, so I'll add a few more to look at those later on. And then I'm going to use targeting. And this is where the magic of this product comes in, or the magic of personalization, really. So I am going to target people that I have decided to call chair lovers. And these are people that I have identified in Google Analytics as having gone to that chair page 3 or more times, but not having added to cart. Simple segment that I was able to determine in my data, created the segment, and used it as an audience to share with Optimize. Now, when somebody comes to this website and they click on that Adirondack chair, they don't add to cart, when they come back to the website, I'm going to target them into this experiment, and they're going to see this new message that life is busy, take a seat. OK, so now I'm going to give you a few more tips for personalizing with Optimize specifically. Tip number 1, inject code to create pop-up offers. This is pretty simple. I'm going to show you how to do it in Optimize, but you can really do this with any tool. And I think it's a great way, again, to understand your users and make that experience more personal for them. So you want to identify those key segment of users. Examples could be frequent flyer status. Are they a premium tier flyer, or are they an economy flyer? Or their geolocation. Are they in Japan, or are they in North America? Then we're going to create a unique offer for each group, and we're going to target those groups. My developer wrote me a simple little line of code. I'm going to load that up, insert it as HTML into the editor, and then when they come to our Google Store website, as a loyal user who I know has been here multiple times, who has purchased multiple times, when they come, I want to show my appreciation for them. I know that they're a loyal user, and I want to offer them something. So I'm going to offer them a 20% off promo code, just because we like our loyal users and we want to make them feel even more special. OK, tip number 2, use GA audiences for remarketing and targeting. As mentioned, I love analytics. I love to dig deep into analytics to find specific groups of people who are performing the way I want or underperforming in the way that I want them to. And I am going to address those audiences not just by targeting them to a specific experience, but I'm actually going to take it one step further and start by remarketing to them to get them to come back. So let me give you an example. This is Light in the Box. It's an online retailer website. And let's say that I've come to this website and I have searched for digital cameras. And I've done some research. I'm very interested in a few. I might have even added one to my cart. But I haven't bought one yet. I haven't checked out. So as the analyst for this company, we're all good analysts, we're going to go ahead and dig into Google Analytics and really look closely at this checkout funnel. So we're going to see that a whole bunch of people came to our website. A lot of people then looked at the digital camera pages. Some may have even added to cart, but very, very few, you can see here, have actually checked out. The cool thing about this report in Google Analytics is actually that if you click that red arrow pointing down from any one of those steps, it will pop up with a notice saying, hey, we see that in this case, 2,346 people fell off from adding to cart to checking out. Would you like to create an audience or a segment and remarket to them? We're good analysts, right? Of course we do. We want to bring these people back. They are interested in our products. We want them to go ahead and buy these cameras. So let's go ahead, create this audience, and remarket to them. And perhaps we want to give them some kind of incentive to get them to come back to our websites, maybe an offer for free shipping when they return. So let's go ahead and create those ads. We'll run them. We'll bring them back to our website. But let's take that one step farther, because you can use these same audiences that you're remarketing to target your personalized experiences on the website. Or you could target somebody who has come from a certain ad campaign via UTM tagging or something like that. And you can say, hey, I know that you've come from this ad now, similar to the example I gave earlier with the landing page test. Let's go ahead and add a new message to that website when people from this ad come back and say, hey, welcome back. Get free shipping on your next order. I like this example a lot because I think it's really, really powerful to combine remarketing with targeting that specific audience. And I think it can really drive that conversion rate much more than many other things that you can tweak here. OK, my last tip for Optimize is to get more out of reporting in Google Analytics. So one of the cool things that we did with Optimize was we actually, with every single hit, are sending to Google Analytics an experiment ID, an experiment name, and a variant ID, or variant number. And these can be accessed in Google Analytics in a number of ways. You can build them into a segment. You can slice and dice your data with a secondary dimension of any of these things. You can build out a custom report with many of these things. My favorite is you can actually create audiences and segments based on previous test behavior, like they were part of this test, and so then you're going to use that as an audience to target a future test. So you can kind of do iterative testing that way based on what people have seen in the past from other tests. I think it's really, really cool. You can get very meta doing that. And what that looks like, I've just created a custom report in Google Analytics here where I'm looking at experiment name. You can see I've got 3 different tests running here. I've got my variant ID. 0 is the control. 1 is the first variant. In this case, I only had 1 variant for each test, and a few metrics that I pulled in. So I think that's really, really cool and a great way to get more out of that experiment data. It's not something that's unique necessarily to Optimize. I actually did this out of the box, like using the data layer with Google Tag Manager when I was doing my server-side testing tool. But we built it in to make it easier for you. So I talked about a few things today. I talked about factors that are driving low conversion rate. how you can drive conversion with personalization, and then a few tips specifically for Optimize. So not all of your customers are the same, and now you have a lot of ways to personalize, starting at mass scale all the way down to very personal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Krista. That was wonderful. I definitely have a lot of ideas I'm going to go home and play with. We have a couple questions here. First one. For businesses with limited data and small customer base, how do you initiate personalization?
Good question. So I think that you can do it in a lot of the same ways that I mentioned. I think you need to be a little bit more picky when it comes to a small user base. Just in terms of test results, it's hard to really get a lot of answers when you don't have a big sample size. But I think you can apply a lot of the same characteristics, especially the ones where you're looking at mass scale, just to understand who your customers are and maybe not even change different experiences for different users, but just speaking to that one audience of Gmail users in the case of the apps business.
And interesting question. Oh, they keep jumping up and down here. Whoa. What if I don't use Google tools?
So I think that you can do almost everything that I talked about without Google tools. I know I've done a lot of it without Google tools. So I don't think any of it is necessarily tool specific. A few of the examples were about a certain tool, but you can really get creative and do these types of things in a lot of tools.
And this was the interesting question I was hoping would get upvoted. Would you completely disagree with Jared's spool that GA does not tell us much, especially the why?
I think Jared had some very valid points. I don't know that I would completely disagree. I would disagree with some of them. But hey, I'm the analytics advocate for Google, so it's part of my job, right? No, I think that GA can tell you a lot of things. I think that you need somebody who understands how to use it. And not just how to use it, but how it's implemented on your website and what that data actually means. And I think pairing that quantitative data with qualitative research, as talked about today, is incredibly important to give a little bit more human interaction to that data that you're looking at.
I mean, the way I use analytics, I try to use analytics to find the what. That's what I use it for. And then you do the other stuff. So to me, that also seems completely logical. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was a huge pleasure.
Thanks.